Hey guys, my name is Leonydus Johnson, and this video is about white privilege. So I had a discussion on Twitter about it the other day, and someone suggested that I make a video, so here we go, white privilege. Okay, so first and probably the most important point to make is that racial disparities do not automatically equal racism. Disparities between racial groups are basically what drives white privilege and white guilt and all that stuff, right? But there's a lot of variables that go into these things, and race is only one of them. So the assumption that is that race is the causative variable is bad science. And this also goes for things like gender differences and things like that. So keep that in mind. But if you look at a few of these so-called disparities, like police shootings, for instance, because Anne Hathaway thinks black people fear for their lives every day because racist cops might shoot them, right? Okay, well, 2017, 223 black people were killed by police. That's 0.0006%. 459 white people were killed. That's 0.0001%. So blacks were 6 times more likely to be killed by police. Now, that's the only statistical analysis people think they need to do, right? Boom. 6 times more likely to die than white people. Racism has to be the explanation. It has to be. However, black people commit crime at higher rates than anybody else. And actually, even only being 13% of the population, commit murder and robbery at higher numbers. Not just rates, higher numbers. That's insane. So if you remove violent crime rate as a variable from the equation, the disparity not only vanishes, but it shows something you would never expect if you listen to people like Don Lemon, right? So 618,000 black people were arrested for violent crime last year, and a little over 1 million white people were arrested for violent crime. This is 2017. So that means that 0.037 black people, or 0.037% of black people were killed, and 0.042% of white violent crime suspects were killed. So, number one, police rarely kill anybody of any race. And two, white violent crime suspects are slightly more likely to be killed than black violent crime suspects. So then people might talk about things like poverty and say that, black people are more violent and more criminal because poverty is institutionalized racism or whatever. And to that, I say no. First of all, again, you have to look at all possible variables. Okay, so the great Thomas Sowell talks about how age actually plays a role in these things because younger people tend to be more criminal than older people, right? The median age of white people is 42.9, and the median age of black people is 33.3. That's almost 10 years. And that alone will contribute to some of the disparity. That's just one variable. And also, we know it's true that single motherhood correlates with poverty, right? And like 70% of black children are born to single mothers. Educational outcomes, black children tend to spend significantly less time on homework than their white peers. But look, there's significant intragroup disparity as well as intergroup disparity too, and I think about it when we talk about failing inner city schools and things like segregated black neighborhoods. Okay, so for example, Dunbar High School in Washington, which was located in an impoverished neighborhood, it operated like an all-black charter school from the late 1800s up through the 1950s. They were taking students in the city who had to apply, meaning, they wanted to be there. It was consistently one of the highest performing schools in the country for like 60 to 70 years. This was through the Great Depression and the height of racism. They were still one of the highest performing schools. They were sending a higher percentage of students to college than the white public schools. But then anti-segregation laws in the 50s made it so you had to go to school in the district or neighborhood that you lived in. So that meant Dunbar could no longer be selective about its students. So what happened? The school basically tanked. And maybe that's a bit harsh, but I think even in like the 90s, they were still sending less people to college than they were at the height of racism. So clearly racism is not the reason for Dunbar's underperformance. Yeah, it has to be something else. Has to be. And that goes for other underperforming schools. You have to look at all the variables. You can't just look at racial disparity and say, okay, there's disparity, so it has to be racism. That's not the case. And the issues that exist in those neighborhoods are not driven by racism. There have been attempts to relocate low-income people from impoverished neighborhoods into middle-class neighborhoods, which they have largely failed, and instead actually made those middle-class neighborhoods worse. And so the problems are much deeper than simply moving people around. And just looking at racial disparity and chalking it up to racism is, like I said, bad science. You have to look at all the variables. And nobody wants to do that. They just want to see the disparity and chalk it up to racism. The last point I want to make, I guess, is about white guilt that goes along with this. And just please stop. Listen, you do not have to apologize for your skin color, okay? You don't have to apologize for atrocities that happened in the past that you didn't have anything to do with. And it is actually condescending when white liberals bemoan their white privilege and complain about how much they loathe having more opportunity than I do. Right? What privileges do you have as a white person that I don't have? To be perfectly honest, acting this way like you are some kind of savior of poor minorities, that's racist. It makes no sense. I don't know. I'm just tired of the victim and oppression Olympics, where we all align ourselves in various identity groups, each one having different levels of victimhood and oppressor. And that view of the world is toxic, and it helps nobody. So I don't know. There's a lot more I could say about it, but I don't want this video to go on forever. And I guess the bottom line for me is that focusing on group disparities is a major problem. And it's not helpful at all, because you're not looking at individuals or individual outcomes, and it isn't sensible to even expect outcomes to be equal, even among siblings who grow up in the same household with the same parents. Equal opportunity? Great. I'm all for that. Equal outcomes? No. We need to start looking at each other as individuals, with each person being an embodiment of the vast range of variable traits. And I've said it before, but skin color is no more consequential to who we are than hair color or eye color. We need to see each other as individuals and not be defined by identity groups and the identity politics that go along with it. And, it's incredible that people mock Christianity, but if we actually looked at each other as children of God, as sacred, unique individuals, the world would be a much better place. Never apologize for who you are, and never let anyone tell you that you're a victim. We are all privileged because we live in the United States of America. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless.